Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. This episode is sponsored by GrowX Labs. Let's be real, leading a business is lonely. When the big decisions land on your desk, who do you actually talk to? That's where GrowX Labs comes in. Their executive decision support gives founders and execs direct access to a strategic sounding board. Someone who's been in the trenches and knows how to cut through the noise. Whether it's team tension, high-stakes moves, or just needing to talk it out, GrowX helps you move forward with clarity and confidence. Head to growxlabs.com/Mark. That's GRWX labs.com/Mark and book your discovery call. So I often have entrepreneurs on Mark My Words who have more than one business, and Omar Atia is no exception to that rule. He has more than one business. He's been in the entrepreneurial stratosphere for a number of years, and today, even though he is also the founder and CEO of ThoughtFire, who enables organizations, for-profits, nonprofits, government organizations, and startups with the mindset and tools to unleash creativity, maximize potential, and achieve transformational results, we are going to actually have pardon the pun, a delicious conversation about his newer business, which is ZeroCarb, and ZeroCarb Lyfe opens the door to a growing consumer market, zero-carb, keto-friendly, diabetic-friendly, gluten-free, which I love, dairy-free, clean ingredients that brings in new sales and answers high consumer demand. Their products are carefully crafted with 4 ingredients: chicken breasts, olive oil, salt, and other spices, which I'm sure Omar will fill us in on what other spices means. But the story, and I'll obviously let Omar tell the story because, well, it's his story. But I do love just going to his website and seeing the inspiration for how zero carb, and I'm guessing especially like the pizza, came about. And Omar, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great. It's a rare Friday morning for me to be doing an episode. Uh, you're gonna be thankfully I just ate, and I know there's more to you than just the food in general, because I also know that you're a pretty smart guy with engineering degrees, and I have to
Appreciate that.
ask, what would first of all, what kind of like inspired you growing up? Was engineering something that you were thinking about? What led you to that path?
Well, if we're going back that far, I'll actually share very candidly my path. So when I was very, very young, as early as I can remember, actually in kindergarten, I said I wanted to be a heart doctor, a cardiologist. And then if you fast forward to high school, the very first anatomy and physiology class, when I saw blood and saw dissecting an animal, I realized that can't be for me, and that I couldn't be a doctor. And so The natural inclination I had was always to engineering and engineering type sciences. Also, I happen to be the son of an Egyptian immigrant, and Egyptians are just known for engineering, anciently and currently. You know, the most sought after for decades to be in Egypt was to be an engineer. It's just known for producing engineers. So I actually decided when I was at Purdue, because we had the blessing in Indiana that we have one of the top engineering schools in the world. And I majored in chemical engineering. That's my bachelor's. And it was mainly because I was interested to, when I exited college, to really be making something that I could see on the shelf. And I knew that consumer products, if you're going to be in research and development of consumer products, you have to be a chemical engineer to understand all sides of it. And that's exactly what happened. You know, I graduated with a chemical engineering degree and immediately started working for some of the biggest companies. The first one was Procter & Gamble, which is almost like entering another university for the first 3 years, and learned a lot about research and development and consumer marketing, as well as other disciplines at Procter & Gamble, onto Kraft Foods and Conagra Foods. So very quickly, within 2 years of my career after college, I went into foods, and that's actually where I stayed for the duration of the rest of my career in corporate America, uh, with bigger golden handcuffs. And then that's when I went on to entrepreneurship, 12 years later, and into my own business.
Did you know when you started in engineering that foods was something that you really wanted to do and you were focused on, or did it just kind of happen along the way?
It was really just consumer products. I wanted to be in something that was consumer facing. But really, after the first couple of years at Procter& Gamble, I was in paper products. And so I realized I wanted to be in something a little more exciting, and navigated to foods, and especially craft foods. And that's where kind of, once you develop a career in foods, and I also got my master's part-time while I was at Kraft Foods and Procter& Gamble, as well as having side hustle businesses along the way. Because I was always entrepreneurial ever since I was 7 years old, and having side hustles while going to school of like selling things to buying and selling, you know. So I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I was very entrepreneurial at work, which means you get promoted more and more, which means your number that you have to meet when you become an entrepreneur becomes higher and higher because of lifestyle. And so that's what made it harder, and it took longer to become an entrepreneur full time. But I knew I wanted to be in foods only because once I got into it, it was very exciting compared to everything else, and I stayed in it.
Well, hey, food is exciting to me, and I find it interesting. I don't, even to this day, I've done about 200 episodes of this show, and I've been really kind of racking my brain a lot about how to grow and do more. I don't feel like I have much of a entrepreneurial bone in my body, so when I hear that you were already thinking entrepreneurial as a 7-year-old, I that's really fascinating to me, and just the way that that always kind of like stuck with you. Did you know that eventually, especially taking this path, that you were eventually going to want to do your own thing? I'm guessing the answer is probably yes.
I mean, I knew that I didn't want to only be sort of a corporate paycheck dependent person. Okay. And so whether I had intended or always saw that I would eventually be main hustle or not, as we call it today, was sort of, you could say, debatable. But it became more and more clear later in my career that I had some things to offer that could, because I was making a lot of money every time I'd go into a bigger role for other people, right? And so the natural inclination is to say, well, I have the leadership skill, because I grew in leadership, responsibilities as well at these companies. I went in R&D and operations, so I became very familiar, as well as consumer insights when I was at Procter & Gamble, because when you're downstream research and development, you're very connected to research and consumer insights. So I really got all three sides of the business and was very comfortable to take a leap. Initially, launching, like you said, a consulting company and helping other companies and growing that consulting company with a couple of branches in different parts of the world. And then that's what led me to start going into startups.
So, I mean, what led you? So you took the leap. And I know that you, me, and a lot of other people, and pretty much everybody I've met through this show, we all have kind of like that same bug, even though I just claimed I don't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. I kind of don't feel like I do, but I'm in the mix. But I do know that I have certain traits that you and a lot of other people tend to have, like just that individuality, that drive, that resourcefulness, just that ability to dust yourself off and keep going. Because as an entrepreneur, you're going to have, and I know you probably know very well, that you're going to have challenges along the way. And I know I have my moments where I'm like, why am I doing this? I should just kind of wrap her up and, just keep working, just focus on the corporate ladder. But at this point, I know that I'm too far into it and having too much fun as well to, really revert my thinking. So I'd be interested in just knowing just what was that, grown up transition going from a more corporate environment to Thoughtfire and then into even zero carb, just that transition into in the mindset of this is it. I'm off and running. I'm depending on me moving forward.
Sure. Well, first, I'd like to say that I don't think you're right when you say you don't have an entrepreneurial bone in your body. I think everything you described, as well as the fact that you candidly that you have a podcast that you're running, that to me is entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship doesn't have to mean that you've launched something that's a growth startup that is eventually going to exit. Entrepreneurship is when you launch something that you own and that you're responsible for, and that in the end, its survival is accountable to you, and you're willing to go the distance with it, or as far as you really can reasonably. That to me is entrepreneurship. And obviously being open to listening to the market is critical to being an entrepreneur. For me, I like I said, I was getting thicker and thicker golden handcuffs, which is what we like to use, those who have been in corporate world and made the leap to entrepreneurship. And I knew that I had a lot that I wanted to help with. Part of my motivation has always been that I cherish the time I give to volunteering and to things outside of things that generally you wouldn't ask for pay for. I like to give my time to that. And so in my mind, as the years passed and my family was growing, I figured, the way to do that and to do that more and to give the most I can to that is to really not have to go every single day, 9 to 5, to get your pay, to have some level of what people call financial independence. Little did I know, of course, that the 10 years or 12 years of entrepreneurship would be consuming more time. But like you said, it's a time that is very well spent because it's enjoyable. You're learning a ton. You feel like you're growing every single day as an entrepreneur, whereas you don't always feel that way in corporate America, even if you're one of the most entrepreneurial people. So for me, right around 2009, 2010, one of my side hustles at that time was a language learning growth startup, which was a ton of learning. It was very successful for a few years, and then it wasn't really a side hustle business, and it was a little bit before its time with regards to the technology that was available to us at the time, because it was a distance learning application. And so but I learned a ton from it, and I said, you know what, this is what excites me. And so I realized that the method I had and the methods I had learned in terms of creative problem solving and creative innovation was really helpful to companies, as well as some other skills related to results operating systems, and launched a consulting company with just one partner and one employee, and grew it from there. And that's how Thoughtfire started. But I didn't make the decision to take the leap with zero business, and that's what I highly recommend to people. As much as you can, side hustling your endeavor so that you have some level of market validation before you take a leap like that. Sometimes people think what's stopping me from starting a business is that I have this job, and so I'm going to quit it and I'm going to go all in on this idea. That's one of the stupidest things a person can do, because normally ideas or solutions that we think are successful, it's very, very rare that the solution you think is successful is actually the solution you'll end up with if you're trying to solve a problem for customers. So anyway, for me, it was really that moment that we had enough business, me and that partner. I was side hustling, he was main hustling. We had an employee, and it became clear that I needed to go full time for us to grow it significantly.
And that is a really big decision to make. And let me just come in here on the other side of the spectrum. So you made a big decision, big leap. And me on the other side, I am still working at a corporate job day to day. And part of the reason for that is that it's just a phenomenal job and opportunity. And it gives me everything that I need to do an episode of Mark My Words on a Friday morning, for example. But
Sure.
yeah, there is no shame in your game if you decide to take a little more of a cautious. Not that you weren't. I shouldn't like even imply you guys were being cautious, but I think I'm speaking for me only because I've been super duper cautious in my journey to getting to where I'm trying to go, and I appreciate you challenging what I've been saying this morning about having an entrepreneurial bone in my body. I think for me, I guess I'm a product of the moment, and I hear your story, and I guess that's kind of like rubbing off on me and just making me think about my childhood and up until I turned 40 even. I never really thought about starting anything. Like I knew that I needed to do things that fulfilled me more. And I think that's what
Mhm.
I was searching for. And eventually it kind of like turned into all of this. So I think that's why I say all of that. And, sometimes I can look at somebody else's mindset and success, and I'm very envious of it. So kind of like I am envious of zero carb, which the time I'm telling you gets away from me very quickly doing this show. I always feel like I don't have enough material or have too much time, and then I find out I'm already running out. So let me give you an opportunity to talk about the story and the transition to creating Zero Carb Life because Mohammed's dilemma from your website is something that really caught my eye. And I would love to hear the story about how you guys helped him to enjoy pizza with diabetes.
Yeah. And by the way, we don't only focus on the fact that our products are for diabetics and people with celiac disease, which they are. We also have the highest protein to calorie ratio of any chips or any pizza on the market. So people who are very serious about their fitness and very serious about their protein and calorie counting, we're the products for them. But that journey started for me, like I said, when I really got a ton of experience in big corporate food companies. And the whole time that I launched the consulting company in 2014, and by 2018 we were big enough to where we could dabble in startups. And in 2019, I got introduced by a friend to what Mohammed had sort of invented on a kitchen top. And I knew with my experience and with my understanding of brand as well as process and scaling, because I had been in operations successfully and turned around factories, I knew that we could scale that with some of my knowledge, especially around how to scale it without while still maintaining the proprietary nature of the fact that we don't have additives, we don't have binders, maintaining that clean ingredient line, maintaining that high protein count. And so that's what we started the journey. That's what we started the journey doing, is really focusing on how do we scale this. And I was helped significantly because it was 2020. So initially it was sort of scoping out the company up until the beginning of 2020. Then in March of 2020, something very major hit the entire world, which was COVID. And so our consulting clients, which were some major consulting clients, a lot of them had actually shut down completely and had no business of their own, which meant that we had no revenue for the consulting company. So I was able to shift a lot of the talent that was in the consulting company to be the startup team of ZeroCarb Lyfe. And that's how we launched. So we had a huge acceleration on our launch. And additionally, people had started getting used to ordering food and to their homes, which was wonderful for us to start an e-commerce side of the company. And so we first started with pizza crust, which we have a patent on our process and two patents pending, and then more patents in the wings, because we really have a moat around how we make it. It's a very unique way that we use time and temperature, whereas every other company that makes protein products uses additives or binders. And we use that at scale. We are able to make a ton of crusts, and especially now we've vertically integrated and achieved control of our manufacturing. But we launched it in 2020 with specifically getting crust to pizza restaurants to be able to make their pizza on our crust as just an ingredient, and then selling the crust D2C for people to make their own pizzas or to use it as a tortilla to make quesadillas, etc. And we just got wildly successful response from the market and market validation. So we knew we had something real. And then from there, it kind of grew into us looking at all the product forms and doing upstream development of product forms, which we have patent pending around that. And that's when we started realizing what we needed to launch. Because the point is, healthy food has this, or had, now it's getting a little bit better, but has this aura or this market awareness of people that if I go buy something healthy, it's definitely not going to taste the same as something that's the traditional way it's made. And we want to genuinely change that in people's minds. That's the way we can transform health, is to make it not a sacrifice to buy healthy options. And that's what we're trying to do with our pizza and our chips, is that you get the protein, you get the low carbs, you get the healthy and clean ingredients, but it tastes as good as or better than all the other craveable, counterparts of the same foods.
And I think what you guys are doing is important and something that I think people want more of, because as much as I enjoy, like, I don't know, not to shout out any competitors, maybe I won't even shout anybody out, but uh, but
It's
there's
okay. We
a
like competitors because we always beat them in our macros and our tastes. So you can talk about them.
all right, well then, I love a Red Baron pizza, for example.
Okay.
They're
Yeah.
very good, but probably not the greatest thing for you. And I know sometimes when I have those, and I don't, unless it's like, includes ingredients similar or exactly like the products that you're selling, I tend to steer away these days. I'm not getting any younger. Um, something like a red Baron is really delicious, but you might regret eating that later on, depending on what your tummy can tolerate. So I really feel like what you're trying to do, and I especially find that gluten-free options, anything that has like something that is gluten-free, is usually good for somebody like me. Now, I have no idea what, if I have a gluten intolerance or not. Um, I was born with some issues. I know my tummy can be a little selective, but I know that those kind of options work well for me, and they're better for you anyway. So I really love that more people are steering in that direction, especially from like the frozen food standpoint, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this show today, because I love what you're doing with that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it is something that's definitely trending to more and more awareness and more sort of commitment from people to eat healthy and to look for those options. And again, to me, I'll give myself as an example. Now I'm able to eat our chips, for instance, because I'm almost it's almost impossible for me to watch something at night without crunching on chips or popcorn, which is probably not a great habit. But now I'm able to eat our chips and not feel bloated and not feel guilty because it's actually adding protein and it's helping me sort of get satiated from less chips because of the fact that it's protein. So the idea is that you're right. The general the general market of gluten-free and other products, while they offer that health benefit, have made people feel like, well, this doesn't feel like a slice of pizza. It doesn't bite like a slice of pizza. our goal is if you like a thin crust pizza, and of course for people that like deep dish, our pizza won't be good for them because we only have thin crust dough. That's the way we can make it. But if someone likes a thin crust pizza and likes the toppings and everything, they'll love our pizza, and it's been very successful for restaurants that have a good reputation as well. That people feel they enjoy the same pizza, and it's more protein, no bloating. There's people who are diabetic that have taken videos after eating our pizza where their blood sugar goes down instead of up. So it's the type of thing where once people are aware and they try and they believe, it's hard to go back.
You're tapping into a lot of things here because as you were talking about the effect that the chips have had on you, I have to admit that not only do I love a frozen pizza, I love chips. And chips in general are just very addictive and can drive a lot of health issues, especially I know in my family, heart issues are, you know, they probably named the phrase heart issues after my family because they're just everywhere. And I know, again, as I'm getting older, I'm like, as much as I need to snack because I'm actually kind of like borderline diabetic myself, um, I'm taking something I need to snack and need to just keep that blood sugar at a certain level, but I don't always necessarily want to eat and snack on things that are just going to drive other issues. So the fact that you guys are thinking so much about this, I feel, although I do think there is a market and a place for things like, I don't know, McDonald's or a Red Baron pizza, I think we need more zero carb life out there because there's so many people out there having, issues with, you know, diabetes, with uh, blood pressure, and all this other stuff. And I'm not here to advocate that you're going to be a cure for all of it, but it can help.
It definitely can help, and you'd be surprised how much of our most recent, in the last 2 decades or so, health concerns that have been on the rise in our country are directly related to how we eat. I think a lot of people are now becoming more and more aware of that. And then over the last 2 to 3 years, processed foods are declining. Processed foods are declining in sales. Fast food is declining in sales, and I believe part of that. I mean, part of it might be inflationary because prices have gone up, but a big part of it, based on the research, is because of either GLP-1s and how fast those have gotten adopted into people's lives, or because of the fact that people are becoming more and more aware of the combination of the two. And so I think the market is really, even I know you said we're a new company, we're 5 years in, but really these last year to 2 years have been tremendous for us because now people are very much in need of high protein, low carb, low calorie altogether, and that's exactly what we built our portfolio on.
Well, how has doing all of this, being involved in making food, and especially the mindset that you're bringing to it, how has that impacted your own health? Has it made you want to be healthier? What were you already doing things that were health conscious prior to starting zero carb?
I'd say I was somewhat health conscious before Zero Carb Life. I've always liked sports, and I would go in cycles, right? I'd have like 3 months of really watching what I eat, and then 3 months of kind of not. But since launch, and I never correlated it directly, but I like that you're kind of pointing that out because it is probably directly correlated. I've been working out very regularly, like it's part of my life now. I can't not work out 4 times a week, basically. Don't feel right unless I'm like sick or something. So I work out 4 times a week. I'm very keen on level of protein that I put in my body being at the right level for my weight, and I do watch kind of how much simple carbs I take in. I have an extremely sweet tooth, so that's the hard part for me. But I try to replace some of that with fruits as much as I can. So I've definitely been more watchful, and of course our products haven't hurt. I'm one of our customers for sure because again, like I said, chips is a big thing for me. Pizza is also, but I'm a big consumer of our chips because of the fact that it's something I almost do daily.
We've only met for the past half hour or so, but we seem to have a lot of the same food cravings because love pizza, love chips, and I definitely have a big sweet tooth. And I know for me, so you talked about exercise and how it makes you feel better, how you don't feel right when you don't. And I am probably, so I'm used to working like very sedentary. I've had nothing but sedentary jobs like my entire adult life. So I've gotten a little bit lazy, and that's putting it mildly. I do notice that, so I have a particular workout that I do. Uh, Again, born with some issues and have like, this is total TMI, I guess, but have a lot of scarring in my belly that actually makes it kind of like difficult to lose weight. I always plateau, but I've actually like started doing a workout 15 minutes a day on the elliptical, just with like an incline and resistance. And not only have I seen, I mean, this also plays into a lot of what you're talking about because protein has started to become a big part of my diet. A lot more proteins getting added into my diet, but I was plateauing a lot with losing until I started this workout. I actually asked ChatGPT because they have solved a lot of like issues that, well, I shouldn't say they've solved them. That's a bit over the top, but it's helped. It's complemented, and it's answered a lot of things that I wasn't getting otherwise. But um, not that this is revolutionary, but I can speak to the fact that the combination of more protein and now doing this particular exercise, even 15 minutes a day, I feel tremendous here of late. It's made a big difference.
Yeah, I can imagine. And honestly, people underestimate how much just 20 minutes of movement a day can be valuable. Like if people, for instance, have a very, very tight schedule and really have no time for working out one day or most days, getting up for when you have a call and just walking around, even if it's inside the office, if you can't go outside. But if the weather's nice, just walking outside and having your call, 15 to 20-minute call or two of them while walking can be a huge difference from not. And people underrate it.
I totally agree. And I'm actually about to go outside and walk around for a bit in the Florida heat, which is probably
Oh,
not probably not going to make me feel great, but I'm gonna have fun doing it. So
where
um
are you in Florida?
I'm in the Orlando area actually. So
Oh,
we're
okay.
near, I don't make mention of the actual corporation, but we're going to visit the mouse later.
Okay. Okay.
That's where
Nice.
I
Well, I
get,
hope you enjoy it.
yeah, we go off, and it's that's just how you roll here in O Town. I don't know, I'm making myself sound more gangsta than I am.
Sure.
Anyway, let's get back to so I'm curious to hear a bit more actually about how working for some of the companies that you did, how did they influence the way that you run ZeroCarb Life? What things did you learn that were maybe not so good? Were there things that were good that you implement?
Hmm. Oh yeah, I mean I've learned a ton. I think one thing for sure is process in general, like understanding how to think through things in a process-minded way. The second thing is consumer insights. Just I never knew how much more I knew than the average person that hasn't been at a P&G or a Kraft Foods about how you can the least number of respondents you need for a test to be validated. I mean, I'm also very passionate about statistics, and it's kind of like a hobby, which is very rare for people in general. So that helps. But the fact that I was at Procter & Gamble and Kraft Foods and did consumer insights testing and then took it to R&D and figured out how we develop features and products that would meet the needs of consumers has been, I would say, kind of imperative, like invaluable for what I'm doing with the startup ZeroCarb Lyfe. Additionally, the fact that I've been blessed specifically with being in R&D and operations as well as consumer insights, like all three of those sides, and being leadership as well as working, at a junior level on all three sides, that's also been instrumental because it's allowed me to be able to initially oversee functions that a typical CEO would sort of trust and delegate to someone and not necessarily be able to catch where gaps might be. Whereas for me, I've been able to have a keen eye on all sides of the business and be able to sort of tell when something needs a little bit more care, a little bit more focus, a little bit more work to be done on it. And that's been instrumental as well. So I think overall, I would say starting out in corporation before a startup, especially if it's going to be in the same industry or the same vein, could be extremely valuable and reduce costs and reduce, timelines.
I totally agree with that. Even though how I got here to doing this, the story is, you could say it's a little disjointed, but I got my own degree in television production, and I know there are oodles of podcasters, content creators who don't have that. They don't have that type of experience. They didn't take that route in life. But I will say that I think the fact that I've always been so fascinated by all different types of media, even going back to when you started your entrepreneurial journey, I can remember being 6, 7 years old, just being really fascinated by television and just I was always excited about the TV guide and studying that. I was a little weird with all that, but that's where like my interest was. And I think that journey has served me well as far as creating this show and just my approach and my mindset. And then working in the field on top of that, even though what I do is very behind the scenes, I'm still very much like impacted by what I'm around and the creativity, the creative people, because there's so many creative people who never get to have their own creativity put out there on a bigger platform or don't really take full advantage of that or really put it out there. So just kind of, I feel like I can relate to the fact that having even my kind of background and working, even though this is not anything near what I have ever done professionally, other than doing this show, it makes a big difference and it can, I think, up the game and up the level of what you're doing. And I think just from the way that you speak about your business and the way you're tackling everything, just, you know, combination of wisdom, intelligence, and experience. And I think it's really served you well.
I appreciate that. It's very humbling to hear. I never have the chance to kind of pause and think about myself that way or what's happening, but it is humbling to hear, and I appreciate that.
Well, you're too busy living life. I know there's a lot of things about me that I may not realize, and I'll just kick back and say, "Yeah, I'm an awesome host, I'm an blah blah blah. Like it's just not the way it works because I am coming off of a week where this is the fourth episode I've done,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
it's been business is pretty busy on my end. Um,
That's good.
yeah, no, it's combination of everything else, it can be frankly a little overwhelming. But I mean, I guess I'd rather have that than nothing at all. But I
Sure.
guess my point being that um, even when I have a really good week like this, I can still find things to pick apart. I'm not just like, well, everything's just, great and I'm great or I'm doing great. Like, there's just no time for that kind of reflection, especially if you have goals and you're working towards something, which I feel like we both are.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, let's see what else can we talk about. I actually know one thing I did want to ask that kind of ties in because a company, again, I'm gonna use poor Red Baron as an example. You named your company Zero Carb Life, and it sounds to me like you're just so like committed to being in tune with what the consumer should be looking for and what you want you want the consumer to find you rather than being Omar's or Mohammed's. And I'm just curious to know, is that something that you were thinking about when you decided on this name? Because I think it's a really brilliant name and a really great way to brand yourself.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, initially that was the focus, is we wanted people to know right away exactly what we were about. Of recent, and we focus a little bit sometimes on the life part, because life is LYFE, and it stands for love your food every day, love your fitness every day, love your family every day, love yourself forever. You can do a lot of things with the acronym that we do, and we wanted both parts. That really, initially, we were focused on the consumer that was looking for addressing the simple carbs in their life and still having craveable foods. Of late, we also want to focus on consumers knowing, hey, we have the highest protein to calorie ratio products on the market of these craveable foods. And that's a big deal to a lot more people, and to a lot of people that might be a bigger deal than the carb side. So we're actually, these 2 quarters coming, we're going to be uh, doing almost like a both branding exercises with a much more focus on the protein to calorie differentiation that we have, because we know there's a huge community that cares about that just as much. But you're absolutely right that our name was so that people initially, there's no reason to guess what we're about. Zero carb is exactly what we're about. And the logo initially was, a Z, a C, and a zero, which all have sort of the same top and bottom. So all it was like top and bottom diagonal for the Z, and the C was part of that top and bottom and side, and the zero was all sides. So it kind of made for a nice logo as well.
Yeah, I think one reason I asked you that is just not only based on everything we were talking about, but I feel more and more just as I'm in my own little podcasting world, more people are talking about making sure that they name themselves like a bit more intentionally rather than mark my words because I know 6, 7 years ago when I was starting to think about all of this, I was not thinking of, you know, Mark talks to business owners or, that's a really bad name, but I wasn't really thinking that intentionally. Somebody
Hmm.
in the blogging world, I used to blog a lot, they gave me the idea for this as a brand. And at the time, I didn't know what I was gonna do with it, but when I got the idea to do this show, I was like, oh, I'll just, it's just a name. I'll just go with it.
Hmm.
I know as I'm racking my brain and actually starting to work on putting out new podcasts. I have one that I'm just working on just as myself. I made sure to name it a bit more intentionally, and uh, I know a lot of people think of that in terms of like SEO, which is probably not the direction that you were thinking with your company, but just wanted to throw that out there as a talking point because that seems to be something that people care about a lot nowadays, and I think it's if you can, it's a good idea because it definitely gets more of the right eyes on what you're doing.
Yeah, and there is a case to be made, though, not to, because I don't think you should look at Mark My Words as a poor choice at all. I think there's some naming is about intrigue, so that someone is interested to know, oh, I wonder what that's about, and then they ask the question, and that sort of baits them to come in and take a look. And other things are, when it's a food product company, it might be more valuable for them to know right away exactly what you're about in the name. Whereas for something like a podcast, it might be more valuable for it to be much more about intrigue and about something that's like creative and sort of and has a flavor to it. That's the thoughtfulness behind it. I think both a case can be made that both can be valuable.
I appreciate that viewpoint, and I can't rename this show anyways. We're
Good.
200 episodes in. My wife got that thing back there printed for me, so it's far too late,
Sure.
and it is a good name. So I'm not
It
going
is.
anywhere with that. But unfortunately, I feel like we're coming up to the end of our time. And
Sure.
right now, I'm going to give you the opportunity to tell everybody how they can find you, how they could potentially work with you, and anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love for everybody listening to go to www.zerocarblyfe.com, and that's lyfe.com. Hopefully, Mark will have it in the show notes. And then also, we'll make sure Mark has in the show notes our WeFunder page. You can currently reserve on our fundraise opportunity that we've made the decision to give customers and anyone in the community the ability to basically enjoy the success that we would enjoy and be part of this, especially if they're people who appreciate and care about what we're doing as a mission and see the success in what we're making. So this is really the opportunity to do that. So I highly suggest everybody to at least go take a look at both. Even if you don't yet have an intention, I think when you go to the website, that might increase your intention.
All right, Omar. Well, thank you very much for sharing all of that. Thank you for sharing your journey. And I had a blast. This was a great conversation. So thank you for taking time and starting your morning talking to little old me on Mark My
I
Words.
appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate it, Mark. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, I again am your host, Mark Schmidt. You just listen to Mark My Words. You just listen to me talk to Omar from ZeroCarb Lyfe. And also want to give a shout out to ThoughtFire. He is the founder and CEO of both. And I thank him for coming by. And I thank you all for listening. And I will see you soon with another episode of Mark My Words. Bye for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.